jointly developed campaign to raise awareness on the issue. The campaign was held all across the nation in light of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence in November 2021. Among the participating authorities, there were representatives of the State Committee on Family, Women and Children Affairs, the State Committee on the Work with Religious Organization, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection of the Population, the Commissioner for Human Rights, and relevant civil society organization, all of which have the competence to conduct this type of campaign under the Azerbaijani National Action Plan to combat domestic violence for 2020-2023. Currently, 11 child and family support centers run under the SDFWCA, 9 women resource centers, and 3 community resources hubs were started along with the United Nations Development Program and are now entirely operating. Azerbaijan has implemented the creation of hotline for receiving and forwarding complaints about domestic violence, and currently manages a shelter for vulnerable groups. In regards to the promotion and protection of child's rights as of 2022, the Commission for Human Rights of Azerbaijan declared October 20, November 20 as Child Rights Month. This month-long campaign aims to draw attention to children, prevent violence against them, increase awareness in this field, and achieve and ensure adequate protection and promote children's rights. Within this month, the state, local self-government bodies, civil societies, and other relevant institutions will organize roundtables, training, and seminars, campaigns, exhibitions, competitions, research, and other events in children's rights. In regard to the promotion and protection of the rights of persons with disabilities, on 31st May 2018, the new law on the rights of persons with disabilities, also known as the new law, was adopted. The new law was elaborated and defined according to the principles of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. In regard to the promotion and protection of the rights of migrant workers, in early 2021, the government and the UN country team signed the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, which is a new cooperation document elaborated for the time period going from 2021 to 2022. Among its core priority areas, there is inclusive growth that reduces vulnerability and builds resilience. Azerbaijan is working on improving its institutional legislation in order to achieve inclusive growth, and this includes improving the migrant workers' situation. The new National Migrant Strategy on Migration 2020-2025 was developed in 2019. The strategy gathers the country's plans for migration governance and shows Azerbaijan's intention aligned with the relevant international legal frameworks such as Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, Regular Migration. In regards to refugees and internally displaced persons, improving the living conditions of internally displaced persons and protecting their rights is among the main priorities of the government agenda. 116 settlements were made available, and as of now, more than 320,000 people have been assigned a new place to live. Among Azerbaijan's national priorities lies the great return of internally displaced persons, which the government aims to carry out by 2030. Distinguished Madam President, Vice President, Secretary, distinguished representatives, the participating countries, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now we will start the interactive dialogue. Before I give the floor to the delegations for recommendations, questions, and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will be 1 minute and 30 seconds for each reviewing state. Please be reminded that the use of the word recommend or recommendation is necessary for your remarks to be included in the work report. Our list of speakers follows the alphabetical order. I start by giving the floor to the delegation of Cameroon. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are thanking the Azerbaijani officials on the report and implementation for the human rights situation in their country. Nice. We are thanking the thank you first, Mrs. President of Parliament. We are thanking the Azerbaijani officials on the report and implementation for the human rights situation in their country. However, freedom of media and right of privacy seems to have been violated by the government with the illegal use of spyware and surveillance. We recommend Azerbaijan that they implement effective legislation and control systems that strengthen the rights of journalists and also protect the privacy rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Now I give the floor to the delegation of Canada. Your Excellency, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates. The delegation of Canada welcomes Azerbaijan and its representatives and thanks for its national reports. Canada is concerned about Azerbaijan's recurrent limitation and intimidation of civil society, which is direct consequence of the corruption in the country. Then respectively, the state of Canada recommends the state of Azerbaijan to immediately repeal the restrictive NGO legislation that limits the operation of local foreign NGOs in Azerbaijan, allowing them on the unrestricted registration and access to grants. Secondly, strengthen the anti-corruption law and establish the control of officials and just through an official anti-corruption unit independent of the government by 2025 in order to make it more specific. And third, put some pressure on the authorities to address the ill treatment of the detainees in prisons and detention centers in line with international conventions and improve the conditions in prisons and detention centers. Finally, ensure proper and independent investigation of the arrest and detention of journalists and critics of the government. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Delegate. Now I give the floor to the delegation of Colombia. Your Excellency, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates, distinguished members of the Secretariat. The delegation of Colombia would like to thank the delegation of Azerbaijan for its presentation of the national report, as well as for the ratification of the Convention on the Protection of Children Against Sexual Exploitation and Sexual Abuse, and the adoption of the first national plan for combating domestic violence 2023. However, the Republic of Colombia is concerned by the fact that Azerbaijan has yet to achieve the legal prohibition of corporal punishment of children in the home, alternative care settings, and daycare. Hence, the Republic of Colombia proposes the following recommendations to Azerbaijan. First, to strengthen the efforts in raising awareness regarding the children's rights, with a specific focus on corporal punishment, be it in domestic or public environments. Furthermore, we recommend the state of Azerbaijan to continue its campaigns to raise awareness on the issues of violence against women and domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The delegation of Azerbaijan may now comment. Your Excellency, Mr. Abramovich, if you want to answer the previous speakers or add any comments, you have the floor. Your speaking time is 1 minute and 30 seconds. You may do it from your seat.
Thank you. Thank you, fellow delegates. I will use my time to shortly address some of the asked questions. On 30th of December 2021, the Parliament of Azerbaijan adopted a new media law. As I already said, it consists of 78 articles and aims to align with international standards by modernizing the country's media legislation and improving journalists' working conditions. I believe that this law will set a new ground for the activities that will be improved, as you just mentioned. Also, Azerbaijani authorities and civil societies representative working in the field of violence against women and domestic violence attended a series of capacity building sessions. The sessions aim to provide them the tools to jointly develop a campaign to raise awareness of these issues, such as the corporal punishment for children. The campaign has been held all across the nation in light of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, as well as a corporate child punishment in November 2021. Also, I believe that this activity set a good ground for the development and in the future, probably prohibition of the corporate punishment for children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We'll continue with the list of speakers. Delegation of France. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates. France welcomes the delegation of Azerbaijan and thanks it for the presentation of the national report. France is concerned about the current situation of Azerbaijan, regarding freedom and expression in assembly. Therefore, we recommend Azerbaijan to reopen the proceeding of senior journalists and political opponents and ensure fair and independent trials that would prove or disprove the allegations of imprisonment. Also, we recommend to continue the dialogue in Perth initiated in 2020 to expand political pluralism and establishment of new political parties. And last, we recommend to strengthen the anti-corruption law and establish an official anti-corruption unit independent of the government by 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Now I give the floor to the delegation of Nigeria. Your Excellency, you may have the floor.
Thank you.
Can you wait a second? We have the presenter. You may begin.
Thank you, Madam President. Nigeria welcomes the distinguished delegation of Azerbaijan to the session. Thank you for your comprehensive report. Nigeria appreciates the promotion of human rights by Azerbaijan, specifically the advancements that Azerbaijan has made regarding the rights of migrant workers. Nigeria is concerned about the lack of concrete measures taken by the Azerbaijani government in order to combat human trafficking. Therefore, we recommend that Azerbaijan increases its efforts in fighting the phenomenon of human trafficking by mobilizing more resources for this goal. In order to increase protection of minority rights, Nigeria recommends that Azerbaijan recognizes the lesbian language as an official language and not a foreign language, as it is well spoken by a part of the population. We wish Azerbaijan a successful UPR. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. To the delegation of Azerbaijan, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to previous comments and to make your final remarks. Your Excellency, Mr. Adamovich, you may have the floor.
Thank you, fellow delegates of France and Nigeria, for asking a question. The government of Azerbaijan abstains for commenting and providing explanations. Thank you. And thank you all for asking a question. We believe that your questions were well placed, but we try to provide answers for some of them. I appreciate your questions and appreciate your cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to especially thank the delegation of Azerbaijan for the presentation of the national report and their engagement in the interactive dialogue. The report of the review will be prepared by the members of the assigned Troika. According to this year's procedure, the Troika members of Azerbaijan are the representatives of Colombia. The recommendation section will be adopted today. The full report, including the addendum, will be circulated on Google tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. We will proceed with the review of Cameroon. Once the representative of Cameroon is ready, please raise the marker. Thank you. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Padova Model UPR, Attorney General of the Republic of Cameroon. The delegation of Cameroon has a maximum of 15 minutes to present their national report. Ms. Padova Model UPR, you may have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam President, the honorable members of the working group of the UPR, and the distinguished delegates of the states for your attendance and time today. Thank you to the members of the Troika of France for accepting the assignment of the Troika of Cameroon. I'm Sophia Kolmandula. Today I greet you as the Attorney General of the Republic of Cameroon. We, the delegation of Cameroon, are sure of the viability of the Cameroonian government to facilitate this process as best as possible. Since the third cycle of the UPR, which occurred in 2018, the government of Cameroon has ratified and begun the process of ratification for several instruments within the time period. The International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance has been signed and is in the process of being ratified. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was ratified on the 28th of December in 2021. The optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the Sale of Children, Child Prostitution, and Child Pornography was signed on the 5th of October in 2001, but has yet to be ratified. However, Act number 2010/012, signed on the 21st of December in 2010, has yet, on cybersecurity and cybercrime in Cameroon, and the Tourism Act number 2016/006 was signed on the 18th of April in 2016, with Article 43 reflecting the provisions of the protocol. Additionally, Act number 2019/017 signed on the 24th of December in 2019, gave the President of Cameroon the full support of the legislature in the ratification process. The 2015 through 2019 National Action Plan for the Promotion and Protection of Human Rights was adopted on the 15th of December in 2015 and continues to be operational. The plan covers 4 technical programs dealing with civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights, the rights of specific groups, and cooperation, piloting, monitoring, and evaluation. The plan issued decree number 2018/719 to create the National Committee for Demobilization, Disarmament, and Reintegration on the 30th of November in 2018. The government also took a step to protect the rights of persons with disabilities and as well as the elderly under law number 2021/020 signed on the 16th of December in 2021 for the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of persons with disabilities in Africa in the year 2021 by accepting the protocol of the African Charter on Human and People's on the rights of persons with disabilities in Africa. Cameroon, through the leadership of our president, is devoted to promoting peaceful solutions, committing to a prosperous future and a clean world. It is thus devoted towards mutual cooperation with the most important multilateral mechanisms. In that manner, Cameroon will continue to carefully listen to observations and recommendations made throughout the UPR process and will do its best to implement the recommendations that are in line with our Constitution and the culture of our country. In regards to the question proposed by the delegation of Nigeria, which stated regarding continuing actions, how does Cameroon plan to maintain its high level of cooperation with OHCHR, treaty bodies, and special procedures in the future? Our country has already implemented dozens of recommendations received from treaty bodies and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, such as the adoption of legal acts that implement punishment for crimes against women in the Cameroonian law system. We will continue to cooperate with all of the United Nations mechanisms, such as the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, United Nations Development Program, whose role has been crucial in peace initiatives across the Northwest and Southwest part of our country. Our government will continue to seek assistance of the most important United Nations body regarding human rights and will thus report on the state of human rights within the country with respect and responsibility. In regard to the question proposed by France, which asked about the dangerous resurgence in attacks by Boko Haram in Cameroon's far north region, whereas humanitarian groups under the civil society have made donations to victims and families of this violence from our latest national reporter. What measures is the Cameroonian government taking to protect people concretely? Our government is devoted to further pursuing and punishing terrorists while simultaneously developing long-term strategies to counter international terrorism and combat against the Islamic State within Central Africa. The government of Cameroon established a trans-border security committee along with Nigeria as a means of cooperation between security forces in order to protect civilians from the violence of the Boko Haram terrorist group. Furthermore, a multinational joint task force has been established to counter regional threats of terrorism along with our allies within the Lake Chad region in order to promote stability and peace across the region. Security forces are deployed on the ground to ensure that people are protected from violence. The Cameroon Commission on Human Rights is devoted to prosecuting torture on the ground and engaging directly with the victims of terrorist attacks with emphasis on mental health and health rights. To address the request of the delegation of France in reference to France's recommendation from the third cycle of the UPR on decriminalizing homosexuality in Cameroon, we informed the UPR body that Cameroon's population is roughly divided into 3 groups: 70% Christians, 20% Muslims, and 10% non-believers or others with other beliefs. This demonstrates that the majority of the population in Cameroon embraces a specific religion. And as is known, both the Christian and Islamic religions experience a complex relationship with the topic of homosexuality, and the government of Cameroon recognizes this continuous situation. Thus, at this moment in the UPR cycle, Cameroon is unable to fully settle this matter, be that it ties civil rights with a religious debate. It is in the best interest of the Cameroonian government to preserve not only religious, but also African values and public order. In regards to the question proposed by the delegation of Canada, which inquired about the optional protocols to the Convention on the Rights of the Child that aims to entail instating the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography, signed on the 5th of October in 2001, which has not been ratified yet. In front of this, does the government of Cameroon consider the rights of the child as an important matter? And if so, which are in the expectation of it being ratified, the measures adopted to face these issues? Cameroon signed the protocol on October 27 in 1990 and ratified the protocol on January 11, 1993. This ratification marked the willingness and commitment of Cameroonian authorities to create an environment favorable and conducive to the full development of every child, and thus Cameroon's government shows adequate consideration towards the rights of the children. More importantly, as our colleagues in the team representing Canada have just stated, Cameroon's signing of the optional protocol relating to ending the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography is further proof that Cameroon has a strong will to stand up for the rights of children. But despite the strong willingness, the country faces security, economic, and cultural challenges that do hamper the implementation of children's rights. In regards to the question submitted by the delegation of Colombia, which stated Cameroon has still not ratified the CCPR OP2DP and amended the penal code, which mentions the death penalty as one of the principal penalties in Section 18. Does the government of Cameroon have any plans in the near future to ratify the code? Cameroon is an abolitionist de facto state, with the last execution taking place in 1997. The criminal code adopted in 2016 still upholds the death penalty, especially for terrorism-related offenses. However, the government of Cameroon has not sentenced an offender to death since 2018, and although no execution has been carried out since 1997, at least 220 individuals remain on death row. Cameroon has observed a de facto moratorium on capital punishment for more than 25 years. The sentences of those condemned to death are automatically commuted to life imprisonment and then to time served. Cameroon continues working towards alternative options other than the death penalty. Considering the state of climate change in Cameroon, we've experienced severe flooding since August 2022. Efforts of the Cameroonian Red Cross, as well as that of the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, have allowed resources to reach those affected and have given adequate assessment and support to the situation. Much progress has been made in the development of climate policy that has allowed Cameroon to properly address crises such as these. This includes the National Development Strategy, SDN 30, as well as reforms that enable economic growth throughout the environment and a commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by the year 2030. Cameroon is colloquially known as Africa in miniature, as it is a geographically diverse nation that experiences all major climates of the African continent. As a result of the combination of drought, flooding, and economic factors such as inflation, the socioeconomic state of the Cameroonian population is directly tied to the issue of climate change within our nation. These factors push our government to strive for improved rights for Indigenous peoples and minorities through a medley of environmental policy, economic policy, and civil rights. On behalf of the delegation of Cameroon, we thank the Madam President, Vice President, and Secretary, the working group of the UPR, as well as our fellow delegates for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now we will start the interactive dialogue. Before I give the floor to the delegations for recommendations, questions, and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will be 1 minute and 30 seconds for each review and state. Please be reminded that the use of the word recommend or recommendation is necessary for the remarks to be included in the work reports. Our list of speakers follows the alphabetical order. I start by giving the floor to the delegation of Azerbaijan. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Azerbaijan welcomes the delegation of Cameroon at the UPR Working Group and thanks it for the presentation of its national work. Azerbaijan congratulates the delegation of Cameroon for the launch of public education on human rights and the continuation of the human rights training of judicial staff. However, Azerbaijan is concerned by the large percentage of forced and early marriages of young girls and women. Azerbaijan wishes to make the following recommendations to the delegation of Cameroon. First, Azerbaijan recommends to the delegation of Cameroon to fully implement Article 356 of the Penal Code on the prohibition of forced marriages. Second, Azerbaijan recommends to the delegation of Cameroon to ratify the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the Sale of Children, Child Prostitution, and Child Pornography. Lastly, Azerbaijan recommends to the delegation of Cameroon to ratify the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of all migrant workers and members of their families. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I give the floor to the delegation of Canada. Your Excellency, you may begin.
Distinguished Madam President, fellow delegates, the delegation of Canada welcomes the state of Cameroon and its representatives and thanks for the presentation of its national report. Canada concerned about the Cameroon legislation regarding small movements law regarding the need to align them with international human rights standards. Based on this, the state of Canada recommends the state of Cameroon to bring law number 28 of 2014, law on the repression of terrorism, into line with international human rights standards to ensure that the law is not used to arbitrarily limit freedom of expression. The state of Canada also recommends Cameroon state to keep working on the ratification of the second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, aiming at the abolition of the death penalty. And finally, Canada recommends Cameroon to reach a consensual and peaceful solution in the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest region by undertaking a sustained and bilateral dialogue with the Anglophone minority, clearly outlining their needs, plans, and possible resolutions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I give the floor to the delegation of Colombia. Your Excellency, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates, distinguished members of the Secretariat. The delegation of the Republic of Colombia welcomes the delegation of Cameroon and thank it for the thorough presentation of their report. In addition, we would like to thank you for addressing our advanced written questions. The Republic of Colombia congratulates Cameroon for the national progress towards gender equality, women's empowerment, and the establishment of the unique personal identification number, which functions as a tracking system and a support program for the modernization of the civil registration system. However, the Republic of Colombia is concerned by the fact that Cameroon has yet to prohibit forced marriages or criminalize FGM, as well as the fact that the system of birth registration does not cover all administrative areas equally. Hence, the Republic of Colombia proposes the following recommendations to Cameroon. First, implementing Article 256, prohibiting forced marriages, and Article 277-1, criminalizing FGM. In addition, the Republic of Colombia recommends Cameroon to improve the existing system of birth registration for the unique personal identification number so that it can be accessible to all people without distinction based on the territorial area. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The delegation of Cameroon may now comment. Your Excellency, Ms. Colombo, if you want to answer the previous speakers or add any comments, you have the floor. Your speaking time is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to our fellow delegation for your recommendations. We really appreciate them. In regards to the comments about the death penalty, we do have a enforced moratorium as was previously addressed during the National Report. And in regards to the comments on children's rights, we do, as stated previously, we do feel that we have been improving the situation and we continue to do so. In regards to the other recommendations, we do take note of these and we appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will continue with the list of speakers. Delegation of France. You may have the
Thank
floor.
you, Madam President, fellow delegates. France welcomes the delegation of Cameroon and thanks it for the presentation of the national report and their work. France noticed that Cameroon is taking steps to abolish the death penalty and criminalize female gender mutilation, measures that have not been implemented yet. This considered, we recommend to ratify the second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, aiming at the abolition of death penalty. Also, we recommend to fully implement Article 356 of the Penal Code prohibiting forced marriage and Article 277.1 criminalizing female gender mutilation. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Finally, I give the floor to the delegation of Nigeria. Just 1 second.
Thank you, Madam President. Nigeria welcomes the distinguished delegation of Cameroon to this session. Thank you for your comprehensive presentation of the national report. Nigeria appreciates the promotion of human rights by Cameroon, specifically the advancements that Cameroon has made in regard to the training of state personnel on the issue of human rights. Nigeria is concerned about the lack of legislation regarding domestic violence. Thus, we recommend that Cameroon criminalizes domestic violence in the penal code. Furthermore, Nigeria is concerned about the implementation of Article 356 prohibiting forced marriages and the implementation of Article 277.1 criminalizing female gender mutilation. Therefore, Nigeria recommends Cameroon focus on fully implementing these articles by mobilizing more resources for this goal. Nigeria follows Cameroon's national strategy to combat gender violence globally. While Nigeria welcomes the strategy, we are concerned about the speed of its implementation. Therefore, we recommend Cameroon to reevaluate the strategy's implementation process. Regarding the safety of human rights defenders and indigenous leaders, Nigeria recommends Cameroon to reevaluate the enforcement of criminal law in order to ensure their safety. Also increase the amount of resources that are being used to achieve this goal. We wish Cameroon a successful UPR. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The delegation of Cameroon, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the previous comments and to make your final remarks. Your Excellency, Ms. Colombo-Pilat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to our fellow delegations for addressing your concerns and sharing your recommendations. We have heard you, and we appreciate that which you have proposed and shared, and we will digest and analyze these suggestions even further. We'll remain engaged with the aim of reaching an even stronger common understanding. Thank you.
Thank you for your final remarks. Thank you, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to especially thank the delegation of Cameroon for the presentation of their national report and their engagement in the interactive dialogue. The report of the review will be prepared by the members of the assigned Troika. According to this year's procedure, the Troika members of Cameroon are the representatives of France. The recommendation section will be adopted today, and the full report, including the agenda, will be circulated on Moodle tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. We will now proceed with the review of Canada. Once the representative of Canada is ready, please raise your placard. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Marco. I now give the floor to the Ambassador of Canada. I remind the delegation of Canada that you have a maximum of 15 minutes to present your national report. Ready.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Dear Secretary, fellow delegates, honorable representative of NGOs and MHRIs, the delegation of Canada is glad to be here in this UPR circle, and we want to underline that we will do our best to keep going with our commitment that we have demonstrated in the other UPR cycles. Thanks to the reports of the NGOs and the NHRI, we want to underline these main areas that we want to work on. Inclusion, minorities, especially indigenous people, gender-based violence, and climate change. Before presenting what we have done in these 4 years, we would like to underline that the last 4 years we have worked together not only at the national level, but also local, provincial level in order to better understand what to do in the areas where we have to focus the most. I would like to start with the area regarding economic security. First of all, poverty. We believe it is our duty to take action aimed at reducing poverty for all our citizens, especially minorities. More precisely, indigenous people. Our first strategy is named Opportunity for All, and it involves the cooperation between provincial, territorial, and municipal realities by investing several billions in order to improve poverty conditions. Opportunity for All has registered the first results. We would like to underline that in 2019, poverty rate was 5% of our population. In 2020, it was 3%. We know we have to do more, but this is already a result for us. Regarding education and employment, NGOs have reported how education access has been more difficult for indigenous children than for others. Therefore, we have launched a Building on Success plan, which is a plan that started in 2019 and it goes till 2024. And this is aimed at giving Canadian students, all of them prioritizing indigenous people, new competences in order to be more competent in the work market. We are supporting also labor market participation, especially of young people, more precisely like young women, since they face more difficulties than others. The Youth Employment and Skills Strategy is built on the collaboration of governments and local partners in order to promote high levels of employment, but not at national level, but at the local level, because local governments, local partners know the situation in specific areas better than the national government can. Regarding equality and inclusion, since 2029, we have supported with over than $175 million an initiative called Supporting Black Canadian Communities in order to support all those organizations and companies led by Black-led organizations. Then our budget in 2022 provided $85 million to support the anti-racism strategy and national action plan on combating hate. Other topic, very important to us, gender equality. The government of Canada renewed its commitment to guarantee gender equality and gender-based violence in all its forms and promote women's rights, especially Indigenous women. During the first stages of COVID-19, there has been, unfortunately, an alarming increase in gender-based violence in our country. Therefore, we have launched a project that supports women with more than $600 million thanks to the federal budget of 2021. Then again, with the federal budget of 2022, we proposed an investment of $539 million over the next 5 years. Then the most important part we have to work on, rights of Indigenous people. On June 2021, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People Act came into force in order to guarantee a legal framework under which we are going to implement all these projects in order to guarantee a peaceful coexistence between all our citizens. The government of Canada also has demonstrated commitment in protecting Indigenous languages, because we do recognize that this is such an important part of creating a respectful reality between all the parts in our society. Furthermore, in January 2021, the Minister of Women and Gender Equality and Youth announced over $40 million to fund 34 projects that will support indigenous women by improving economic protection, increasing leadership in various sectors. Lastly, environment and climate change. We want to inform all our citizens about protection and conserving our natural heritage and ensuring a clean, safe, and sustainable environment for present and future generations, especially in those areas where indigenous people are concentrated, since we do recognize we still need to do a lot regarding this factor. Regarding this matter, the government will commit to spend at least 6 billion Canadian dollars over 9 years to fund water, infrastructure, and operations on hundreds of reserves, and will pay $1.5 billion in damages to about 140,000 indigenous people. Furthermore, we would like to somehow respond to the advanced questions we received, and we thank. From Nigeria, we have been asked about the UNDRIP that entered into force in 2021, and we are working on it with several projects in order to implement it. Regarding the Canadian commitment the question was, is Canada implementing the commitment that the Canadian government had previously made towards the protection of Indigenous rights? We believe that all these areas that we have talked about our priority is Indigenous people. Therefore, we believe we are strongly committed in this issue. Secondly, we received advanced questions from France regarding what has been done since the previous UPR cycle regarding the establishment of a mechanism to follow up and independent human rights at all levels. And we believe that we have worked very well in this, since we have always in this year involved all levels, provincial, territorial, local, in order to implement our projects, because we do believe that we cannot improve local situations, especially minority situations, without consulting them. We would like to end thanking you all for listening to us, and thank the Secretary for giving us a speech.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now we will start the interactive dialogue. Before I give the floor to the delegations for recommendations, questions, and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will be 1 minute and 30 seconds for each reviewed state. Please be reminded that the use of the word recommend and recommendation are necessary for your remarks to be included in the working report. Our list of speakers follows the alphabetical order. I start by giving the floor to the delegation of Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Madam President. Azerbaijan welcomes the delegation of Canada at the UPR working group and thanks it for the presentation of its national report. Azerbaijan takes note of the progress made by the delegation of Canada in addressing the challenge related to discrimination. However, Azerbaijan is concerned by the reported continuation of racial profiling by the police, security agencies, and border agents with a harmful impact on Indigenous people, Muslims, African Canadians, and other ethnic minorities. Azerbaijan wishes to make the following recommendations to the delegation of Canada. First, as previously recommended, Azerbaijan recommends to the delegation of Canada to take all necessary measures to ensure that recommendations made by the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination are fully implemented. Second, Azerbaijan recommends to the delegation of Canada to sign and ratify the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Lastly, Azerbaijan recommends to the delegation of Canada to sign and ratify the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of all migrant workers and members of the families. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I give the floor to the delegation of Cameroon. Maybe.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates, and distinguished representatives. As the delegation of Cameroon, we welcome the Canadian delegation, and we would like to thank them for their presentation and continued support on the human rights situation. However, even though we see that the conditions of indigenous people in Canada improved, the socioeconomic inequality continues to persist. It also comes to our attention that the Canadian officials take the right of self-determination of the indigenous people away by constructing pipelines that also affect their environment against their will. At Cameroon, we recommend Canada to establish a well-developed system and make legislation if required to eliminate the socioeconomic gap between the indigenous and non-indigenous population, and also to stop the construction of the pipelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I give the floor to the delegation of Colombia.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates. The delegation of the Republic of Colombia welcomes the delegation of Canada and thanks it for the presentation of the report. Also, the Republic of Colombia would like to congratulate Canada for the new government strategy for gender equality, as well as for passing and implementing Bill C-83 with the intent of eliminating the practice of administrative segregation. However, the Republic of Colombia would like to express its concern about the effective implementation of the aforementioned bill 3 years after its adoption in 2019. That the government of Colombia proposes the following recommendations to Canada. To begin with, to continue its efforts on the effective implementation of Bill C-83 until the complete elimination of that practice, i.e. administrative segregation. In addition, the Republic of Colombia recommends to Canada to revisit the previous recommendations in regard to indigenous people's rights, with special reference to access to clean water, and continue its ongoing efforts in fulfilling its commitments. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The delegation of Canada may now comment. Your Excellency, Ms. Banerjee, if you want to answer the previous speakers or add any comments, you may have the floor, and your speaking time is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Dear delegates, thank you for your recommendation. We will for sure together, all our delegation, see how we can implement them. However, we would like to remind that all the topics we talked about always include a specific priority to indigenous people and to minorities in general. Therefore, we believe that the result cannot be seen in such a short time, and we believe that our effort will be shown in the next years. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Now we will continue with our recent speakers. Delegation of France. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates. France welcomes the delegation of Canada and thanks it for the presentation of national reports. We appreciate Canada's effort to protect the rights of indigenous groups and refugees, and we ask Canada to take further measures regarding these minorities. We have the following recommendations: to develop a comprehensive national strategy to ensure the implementation of the protection of indigenous women's rights, including measures to stop sterilization and violence against indigenous women. The second recommendation is to ensure that Canada's refugee resettlement program. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Now I give the floor to the delegation of Nigeria.
Thank you, Madam President. Nigeria welcomes the distinguished delegation of Canada to this session. We thank you for the comprehensive presentation of the national report. Nigeria appreciates the promotion of human rights by Canada, specifically the advancements that Canada has made in protecting the rights of migrant workers. Nigeria is concerned about the implementation of commitments that the Canadian government has made for the protection of indigenous women's rights, which are included in the Sustainable Development Goals 5 and 10.
For this reason, we recommend that Canada increases its efforts in protecting Indigenous people rights by mobilizing more resources towards solving this issue. Nigeria is also concerned about reports regarding violence and forced sterilization of Indigenous women. Thus, we recommend Canada to investigate this issue thoroughly and establish an institutional framework to deal with it. We wish Canada a successful UPR. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. To the delegation of Canada, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the previous comments and to make your final remarks.
Honorable Secretary and dear representatives of NGOs and delegations that gave the recommendations, we thank you for your recommendations and also thanks to the report of NGOs. We do recognize the difficulties that we are facing with Indigenous women and also regarding climate change and access to water. Therefore, we will commit to this issue and do further step forward to improve the situation. However, we would like to underline that in all our projects, we always try to take in consideration these minorities, and it's also due to our history that we are facing these problems today, and we will try to make sure and take actions to make this situation clear to all our citizens in order to create a peaceful coexistence between all the citizens and a peaceful coexistence with the Indigenous people of our country. Thank you for the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your final remarks. I would like to especially thank the delegation of Canada for the presentation of their national report and their engagement in the interactive dialogue. The report of the review will be prepared by the members of the assigned Troika. According to this year's procedure, the Troika members for Canada are the representatives of Cameroon. The recommendation section will be adopted today, and the full report, including the addendum, will be circulated on Moodle tomorrow by 2:30 p.m. I now give the floor back to Madam Vice President Huggins to give further instructions on the drafting of the work reports.
Thank you, Madam President. We will now proceed to the drafting of the work group reports of the states reviewed in this morning's session. The states that went under review this morning, Azerbaijan, Cameroon, and Canada, and the states acting as their troikas, Colombia, France, and Cameroon, must stay in the room to draft the report. Delegates and participants not involved in the drafting the troika report must leave the room for a coffee break. The final version of the work group reports shall be uploaded by the troikas on Moodle by 1 p.m. The adoptions of the recommendation section of the working group reports will begin at 11 a.m. We kindly ask you to avoid delays. Thank you. Madam President, you may now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The session is now closed. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, it is my privilege to welcome you to the adoption of the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of Azerbaijan, Cameroon, and Canada. For the presentation of the Troika reports, we kindly ask the representative of the reviewed state operating as Troika to stand up, walk over to the podium, and wait for the timer to start to begin their presentation. We will now proceed with the adoption of the recommendation section of the report of the UPR of Azerbaijan. The Troika for this report consists of the representative of Colombia. Her Excellency, Ms. Ana Natalia Rodriguez, Vice President of Colombia, who on behalf of the Troika will introduce the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of Azerbaijan. You may come over to the podium. Your Excellency, you have 5 minutes. I give you the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam President, distinguished members of the Secretariat, fellow delegates, and honorary members of the NGOs and NHRI. I am the Vice President of Colombia, acting as Troika for the state of Azerbaijan. I will proceed by presenting the recommendations received by the state of Azerbaijan. The total number of recommendations received was 12. 1 from the Republic of Cameroon, 4 from the Canadian delegation, 2 from the Republic of Colombia, 3 from the Republic of France, and 2 from the Federal State of Nigeria. I would like to mention that all delegates use the correct wording to present their respective recommendations, and all of the recommendations can be considered valid. The state of Azerbaijan during the Troika meeting decided to accept 6 recommendations, and the government of Azerbaijan decided that none of the recommendations need to be subject to further examination. The accepted recommendations were the following. From the state of Cameroon, implement effective legislation and control systems that strengthen the rights of journalists and also protect the privacy rights of all. From the state of Canada, ensure proper and independent investigation of the arrest and detention of journalists and government critics. From the state of Colombia, there were 2 recommendations accepted. Strengthen the efforts in raising awareness regarding the issue of different rights with a specific focus on corporal punishment, be it in domestic or public environments. The second one, the continuous campaign to raise awareness on the issues of violence against women and domestic violence. From the Republic of France, the accepted recommendation was to continue the dialogue and efforts initiated in 2020 to expand political pluralism and establishment in the political parties. And lastly, from the state of Nigeria, to increase the efforts in fighting the phenomenon of human trafficking by mobilizing more resources towards this goal. Now we will continue with the noted recommendation. From the state of Canada, repeal the restrictive NGO legislation adopted in 2013-2014 and its amendments delimit the operation of local and foreign NGOs in Azerbaijan, allowing them unrestricted registration and access to grants. The recommendation from Canada to strengthen the anti-corruption law and establish the control of officials and judges through an official anti-corruption unit independent of the government by 2025, to make it more specific, was noted. Also, the recommendation to put pressure on the authorities to address the ill treatment of the detainees in prison and detention centers in line with international convention and improve the condition in prisons and detention centers was also noted. From the Republic of France, Azerbaijan noted the recommendation to reopen the proceedings of journalists and political opponents and ensure fair and independent trials that would prove or disprove the allegations of imprisonment. And also the recommendation about strengthening the anti-corruption law and establish an official anti-corruption unit independent of the government by 2025 was noted. Finally, the recommendation from the state of Nigeria to recognize the Lezgian language as an official language and not a foreign language was also noted. To conclude, no recommendations were subject to further examination. Thank you, Madam President. We thank the delegation of Azerbaijan for the cooperation and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your presentation and for the work of the Troika. Before adopting the recommendation section, I would like to remind you that any comments on the recommendation section need to be made from the floor now. Delegates who want to make comments can raise their placard now. Are there any comments? To the delegation of Colombia, you have 1 minute. You may begin.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of Colombia would simply want to thank the delegation of Azerbaijan for accepting our 2 recommendations, as well as for the cooperation during the Troika meeting. Thank you.
Are there any further comments from the floor? I see no more comments. Your Excellency, Mr. Adamovich, you have 1 minute to add remarks to the comments made by the review states.
Thank you, Madam President. I shall attempt to use the remaining time available to the best of my ability. First and foremost, I wish to express our sincere gratitude to those who have participated in this dialogue. We greatly value your comments, we greatly value your appreciation of our efforts of the government of Azerbaijan and all of our achievements in promotion and protection of human rights. Azerbaijan will continue to defend and advance human rights and freedoms, carry out its commitments and the international treaties to which it to which it is a party, maintain close ties with international organizations who support the growth of multiculturalism. Azerbaijan will continue to ensure the timely submission of its periodic reports to the relevant committees of the Council of Europe and United Nations treaty bodies, as it has in the past. It will also keep up with the implementation of its national plan for action for more efficient protection of human rights and freedoms of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now propose that the working group adopts the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of Azerbaijan. Are there any objections? I see none. The recommendation section of the report is now adopted. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Adamovich, Prosecutor General of the Republic of Azerbaijan, for his final remarks. You may have the floor. Yeah, you may do it from your seat.
Thank you, Madam President. I will continue from the speech I just started. However, because Armenia currently occupies our lands, Azerbaijan is unable to carry out the stipulation of the international human rights treaties to which it is a party. Until those occupied territories are liberated, the effects of the occupation are completely eliminated, the government of Azerbaijan is not liable for breaches of human rights and freedom of the area. The legal and political aspects of resolving the conflicts are based on the norms and principles of international law, specifically the principles of territorial integrity, sovereignty, and inviolability of international recognized borders as outlined in the United Nations Security Council. The Republic of Azerbaijan once again calls on the international community to oblige Armenia to withdraw its armed forces from all the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. An army withdrawal would not only help relax the situation in both Azerbaijan and Armenia, but also in the region as well. This would undoubtedly lead to increased economic activity and overall politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. To you and to your delegation for your participation in this review. We will proceed with the adoption of the recommendation section of the report of the review of Cameroon. Once the representative of Cameroon of the Troika is ready, please raise your hand. You're respected. Okay. We will now proceed with the adoption of the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of Cameroon. The Troika for this report consists of the representative of France. Her Excellency Ms. Viviana Margarita, Minister of State for Development, Francophonie, and International Partnerships. On behalf of the Troika, will introduce the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of Cameroon. Your Excellency, you have 5 minutes. I give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates, for your attention. I am Viviana Margarita, Minister of State for Development, Francophonie, and International Partnerships. Today, I represent the Troika of Cameroon. The delegation of Cameroon has received 13 recommendations. 10 have been accepted and 3 have been noted. Cameroon decided to accept all the recommendations made by Azerbaijan, continuing to engage in national campaign to end child marriage, and has begun process of ratification of the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of all migrant workers and members of their families, and are about to be implemented by internal law. Cameroon noted 2 of the Canadian recommendations and accepted to ratify the second protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Cameroon decided to implement Article 2056, prohibiting forced marriage, and Article 2077-1, criminalize female genital mutilation. France's recommendation regarding death penalty and female genital mutilation have been accepted. Nigeria's recommendation about prohibiting forced marriage, gender-based violence, and safety of human rights defenders and indigenous leaders have been all accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for your participation and for the work of the Troika. Before adopting the recommendation section, I would like to remind you that any comments on the recommendation section need to be made from the floor now. Delegates who want to make comments can raise their placard now. Are there any comments? Unfortunately, this session is only for states to participate. Any comments from the floor? I see none. I now propose that the working group adopts the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of Cameroon. Are there any objections? I see none. The recommendation section of the report is adopted. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Padova Model UPR, Attorney General of the Republic of Cameroon, for her final remarks. Your Excellency, you have 2 minutes. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The honorable members of the working group of the UPR and distinguished delegates of the state for your attendance and time today. Today, the delegation of Cameroon was privileged to hear many analyses and criticisms of the state of human rights in Cameroon. We wish to reaffirm the unwavering commitment of our community and peoples to the ideals of peace, stability, and security. Our efforts in this regard will continue and intensify in order to guarantee better conditions for the sustainable and equitable development of our nation. Thank you for the recommendations provided by the delegations. We look forward to a green, diversified, inclusive, and more resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. To you and your delegation for your participation in the review. We will proceed with the adoption of the recommendation section of the report on the review of Canada. Once the representative of the Troika is ready, please signalize by raising your placard. Thank you. The Troika for this report consists of the representatives of Cameroon, Her Excellency Marietta Escalante, Minister of Economy and National Planning of the Republic of Cameroon, who on behalf of the Troika will introduce the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of Canada. Your Excellency, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. It's a great honor and privilege to present on behalf of the Troika, composed of Cameroon, to the draft report of the working group on the UPR of Canada. During the interactive dialogue with the state under review held before, the states delivered their statements and several advanced questions have been posed. As a result, 10 recommendations were addressed to Canada. The Troika would like to thank the delegation of Canada, led by the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, Joanna Spanishi, for their constructive and active engagement in the process and in the preparation of this report. The Troika of Canada shall now present the outcome of the working group session. Canada has received 10 recommendations, of which 7 have been accepted, 2 have been noted, and 1 has been submitted to further examination. Azerbaijan handed in 3 recommendations, of which 1 was accepted and 2 were noted. The first recommendation about taking measures to ensure that the recommendation made by the UN Committee on the Elimination on Racial Discrimination are fully implemented, have been accepted. The second and third recommendations were noted due to the fact that there is legislation that has already been implemented in the past to protect these people. The Republic of Cameroon made 1 recommendation, which included the establishment of a well-developed system and a new legislation to eliminate the socioeconomic gap between the indigenous and non-indigenous population, and to stop the construction of the pipelines on the territory of indigenous people. The state of Canada accepts this recommendation. Furthermore, Colombia has made 2 recommendations to Canada, which concern the implementation of Bill C-83 and the revisiting of the previous recommendations in regard to indigenous people's rights, with a special reference to access to clean water. Both recommendations have been accepted. From France, the first recommendation regarding the development of a comprehensive national strategy to ensure the implementation of the protection of indigenous women's rights, with the focus to stop forced sterilization and violence against indigenous women, has been accepted. The second recommendation concerning Canada's refugee resettlement program is subject to further examination. Lastly, both recommendations from Nigeria concerning the increase of Canada's efforts to protect indigenous people's rights, as well as the investigation of the sterilization of indigenous women, have been accepted by Canada. The Troika would like to address its sincere thanks to the Secretariat for its active support during the entire process. With this in mind, the Troika submits this report to the working group for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for your presentation and for the work of the Troika. Before adopting the recommendation section, I would like to recall that any comments on the recommendation section need to be made from the floor now. Delegates who want to make comments can raise their placard now. Are there any comments? I see none. I now propose that the working group adopts the recommendation section of the report on the UPR of Canada. Are there any objections? I see none. The recommendation section of the report is adopted. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Manetti, Ambassador of the Permanent Mission of Canada to the United Nations at Geneva, for her final remarks. Your Excellency, you have 2 minutes. You may have it.
Thank you, dear Secretary, colleagues, fellow delegates and representatives. We thank first of all the Troika that has worked with us and give us much support. We also thank the recommendations that we have accepted regarding indigenous women's rights, which is what we want to really focus on. Then also all the recommendations regarding environment and access to water. And for the recommendation that we have noted, we believe that there is already enough regulation and legal framework to protect those people that regard those recommendations. We thank you all for helping us. Thank you. We hear the floor back to the Secretary.
Thank you, delegates, for your engagement. Sorry, thank you, Your Excellency, to you and to your delegation for your participation in this review. And thank you, delegates, for your engagement in the adoption of the work group reports so far. I now invite all participants to join us outside for a group picture, and after the picture is taken, we will all come back and have some final remarks to officially close this session. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, welcome back to this work group morning session. I would like to give the floor to Ms. Atile, representative of UPR Info, who will give us some remarks on the simulation that we've been working on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to the last day of the simulation. I apologize because this year I was not able really to follow all the amazing work that you have been done in the simulation, but I'm sure that has been a really exciting and important opportunities for all of you. I just wanted to raise a few points in the last in my last intervention here with you, and to highlight some, let's say, of the important elements of the Universal Periodic Review, and also of important elements that I think might came out from your participation to the simulation. So first of all, I hope that everybody fully understood how important and unique the Universal Periodic Review mechanism is, thanks to its nature of letting and allowing all the states to participate following the same procedures to a review mechanism on the human rights situation. Once again, it's really the only mechanism in which all the states have participated up to now. And their participation has been key not only in submitting the reports, but also in participating in the interactive dialogue, where we see that more and more states attend the UPR working group sessions by formulating relevant recommendations to the state under review. I don't know if you have been able to attend online the UPR working group session that has recently concluded. We had 2 weeks of interactive dialogues where 14 countries were reviewed, but I'm sure that if you had the opportunity, or you will have in the future opportunity to assist on one of these sessions that you can watch online, you will see how states interact among each other and how they formulate recommendations and suggest good practices for the state under review. But the other key element that I wanted to focus on is actually the role, the key role of civil society, that although it cannot take the floor during interactive dialogue, you have seen through the advocacy work, and of course the submission of of stakeholders report, but especially through advocacy work, how really civil society organizations can leverage the impact of universal periodic review. You can see that through the pre-sessions, you can see that through the normal advocacy that organizations undertake, and they use the universal periodic review to reinforce their message at the national level. And that is the last message that I wanted just to say on the universal periodic review mechanism, is that once again, please do not consider this mechanism as only an international, exclusively an international mechanism. The UPR is really a national mechanism to advance and promote human rights. One of the steps of this mechanism, of this process, is of course the interactive dialogue that takes place in Geneva. But the concerns, the human rights issues that are raised during the interactive dialogue in Geneva come from national stakeholders. They come directly from those organizations, those associations that work on the ground on human rights. They come also from the diplomats that are working in the resident embassies in the states under review. And most importantly, these recommendations, once they are formulated in interactive dialogue, they go back at the national level to be implemented. So that is an extremely important thing. And we know that in the fourth cycle that has just begun in November, there's going to be even more attention to the implementation phase of UPR recommendations. So I will not repeat myself with talking about the UPR mechanism, because we already had some training sessions before the simulation. I would like just to inform you that although this year was not that present as the previous year, but UPR Info really believes in the Padova model and the student-led initiative. We really share this initiative as a good practice when we meet other stakeholders. And thanks to my position in UPR Info, I have the opportunity to meet with many professors, PhD students, members of the academia all around the world. And the Padova model is one of the good practices that we like to share with the other colleagues in other parts of the world. We have some very active human rights defenders that in Togo will support in translating the handbook that the precedent team has developed, that explains how the Padova model is created, so that also Francophone students can have the opportunity to replicate this, this important simulation. It's an important simulation for many reasons, not only because it raises awareness on the mechanism itself, but I hope also that it triggers that interest on the fact that human rights really are something that are very close to us, to our everyday life. And even if they are discussed in international settings as the UPR working groups in Geneva, they really are talking about the rights of the people, of the citizens of every city. So I hope that in your future careers also you will use the UPR in your probably, I don't know, advocacy work, if you work with some NGOs in the future, or if you will be part of governmental institutions, that you will be well aware of the potential of that this mechanism can have. And last but not least, I wanted to conclude, let's say, my intervention today by saying that UPR Info also is open to offer internship positions to students who would like to, let's say, gain even more experience on the UPR or acquire skills in advocacy or communications. And we have recently opened 2 internship positions. The deadline to apply is on the 2nd December. We currently have a former student of the M&A on Human Rights of the Padova University that is currently working with us as an intern. So in case that you are interested, you can find all this information on our website, and we will be happy, of course, to keep in touch with you and on the incredible work that you will do in the future with human rights. So thank you very much for the attention. And over to you.
Thank you so much, Nicoletta, for joining us today and for your final remarks. I think we can all benefit from these works and to continue with the efforts that we've been making this week. We will now end our morning session for a lunch break upstairs, and we will reconvene at 2 p.m. I shall remind you that the afternoon session will consist of the review and adoption of the working group report of 3 states in the review: Colombia, France, and Nigeria. They will have the opportunity to present their respective national report, receive recommendations from reviewing states, and draft their work group report, which shall be adopted in the respective adoption sessions. This session is now closed. Thank you.